In this video, I'm going to walk you through the basics of a floor plan. We're going to talk about both the annotations and the architectural features. So annotations is a blanket term that encompasses anything written or drawn on your plan that conveys graphic information, such as, in our case, symbols, notes, and dimensions. So the first symbol, and one of the most important ones that you can see on a floor plan, is the north arrow, and that's located in the lower left-hand corner underneath the plan. And you can see here it's just drawn with a circle, and the vertical top line is drawn in a very thick line weight, and that indicates that the direction is north. And the north arrow is really important because it allows us then to refer to separate walls and architectural features and refer to them by their cardinal direction. The second thing that you're going to see about annotations is drawing labels. And you can see here, this is drawing number 1 on this sheet, and it's labeled floor plan with the scale. Notice that it's in all capital letters with architectural hand lettering, and the scale is written in our standard format. You can see on the right-hand side of the sheet, you can see the title bar with some information about the name of the class and the term. The sheet number, A101, is in the lower right-hand corner, and what is on the sheet is placed just above that. In the real world, you may also see information about the project, the location, who drew the drawings, and then perhaps some firm information as well. In addition to the title bar and the title under the drawing, you can also see that there's some writing on the plan itself. And in this case, it's really just room labels right now. You can see that some of them are placed centered in the rooms, and then others are placed so that when we add furniture later on, they won't be overlapping. So there may also be other notes added to this plan and other symbols and other graphic information, but for right now, it's a pretty straightforward one. The final set of annotations I'd like to show you here is the dimension lines. And you can see here the dimensions are straight, very thin lines that run around the perimeter of the plan itself. And you can see that there's an overall dimension that goes from the center line to center line of the exterior walls of the building shell. And then you can see that one step closer to the plan itself is another set of dimension lines. These are called interim dimensions. And you can see here, they are also going from center line to center line of the walls, or from center line of the wall to center line of the window. Now, this is because this is giving basic information to the framing contractor to know where to lay the studs to build the actual main walls. But keep in mind that dimension lines will move based on what is trying to be conveyed on the plan. And we'll see examples of that a little bit later on. But you can see here with the dimension lines, they're very thin lines. They hover just above the building shell. You can see that there's leading and trailing zeros. And then you can also see that there's a small line that's drawn at the intersection point of the dimension lines, which is called an architectural tick. We draw this with a 45-degree triangle, and it really is just to show the stop and start point of the dimension line. So as you look around the plan, you can also see that the dimension lines go and indicate the center line of the doors and center lines of interior walls as well. You can see that there are some dimension lines that are shorter than others, such as the ones at the center lines of the egress doors. And that is because there's going to be some tags later on and some other additional symbols that we add to this plan. And we just want to make sure that nothing is overlapping down the road. So normally we're more consistent with the length, or we try to be, but of course, if there's any way that there's going to be overlap, we want to avoid that. So now that we have an understanding of the annotations on a basic plan, which includes the symbols, labels, and dimension lines, now let's talk about the architectural features. So we're going to talk now about the walls, windows, and doors. So beginning with the walls, what I'd like for you to notice is that the exterior walls of the building shell are thicker than the interior walls. In this case, the exterior walls are about 8 inches thick, but they can be lots of different widths depending on the structural material and the finishes of the exterior walls. You can also see that they're pochade, which means they're filled in with black ink. Whereas with existing walls in a renovation, for example, the walls are not pochade in with a solid black line. They're actually hatched with a series of diagonal lines at a 45-degree angle. But this is a new construction project, so we don't see those. You can also see that the interior walls are thinner. In this case, they're drawn at about 5 inches thick. Again, there's some variation here depending on the wall type, which we'll get into later. But for right now, all I want you to recognize is that the exterior walls and most of the interior walls are different thicknesses. Now let's move on to the windows. You can see here that there's two different types of windows. There's ones that are a single window that are a little bit wider on the north and south walls. And then you can see that there's smaller pairs of window on the east wall. And it's perfectly acceptable to have different window types in a project. In this case, there's two different types because the ones on the east wall are a little bit more detailed and a little bit more attractive and probably more expensive. And these are placed on the facade that would face traffic. So they're just kind of used to draw people in a little bit more and be prettier. Whereas the ones on the north and south wall are going to be a little bit more simple. But you can see here, these are not overly drafted. This is not a very detailed floor plan. So you can see there's just the lines indicating the front and back edge of the window. And then there's one thin line in the middle that indicates the pane of glass. So the last architectural feature that I want to draw your attention to are the doors. And there's several different door types in this project as well. Keep in mind that the door openings for our purposes are always going to be at least 3 feet wide. And in this case, we actually have egress doors, which are the doors that people would exit out of or come into the space for that matter. And our egress doors in the main cafe and the corridor are double doors. So the opening there is 6 feet wide. And you can see the doors are opening at a 90-degree angle. That's a drafting standard here to make sure that when the doors are open, they won't hit anything, so we draw them all the way open. We also use a quarter round, quarter circle template to create the door swing. And again, it's really important that you draw the doors themselves to be the same width as the opening so that they are correct and so that they would actually work in practice. So you can see here that the doors from the corridor and in the cafe open outward. And again, this is a code requirement so that if people have to exit in the event of an emergency, that the doors open in the direction of egress or in the direction of exit. You can also see in the restroom doors that those doors are also opening outward, and you can see that they are actually pushed backwards towards the north wall so that when the doors open, they do not impose on the egress path because what we don't want is for people to be exiting an emergency and then to be plowed down by the opening of a restroom door. So you can see that that's recessed, and that's a code requirement as well. The storage and office doors open inward because these are smaller spaces, and you'll see later on when we get some furniture in here that it'll make more sense. If you're ever confused about how a door should open, whether it should be in or out, you can just either refer to code compliance, or you can imagine yourself approaching and walking into these spaces, and usually it's kind of intuitive to figure that part out. The last set of doors that I want to look at are the ones in the kitchen and prep service area. So the kitchen door opens outward, again, because it would be technically an exit door as well. And the door between the kitchen and the prep service area is a double swing or dual action door, they call them both. And you can see here that they open in, or this door opens in and out, swings both ways so that travel between these two spaces is easier. So now you should have a better understanding of the architectural features, so walls, windows, and doors of a floor plan, and the annotations that convey information such as symbols, layers, labels, and dimension lines.